You're not gonna believe this.
Oh,
no way.
wow.
Is that a diamond?
I don't know.
Well, it sure looks like it, or at least cut glass of some sort.
For more than 230 years, Oak Island has remained one of the world's greatest unsolved treasure mysteries. Millions of dollars have been spent, countless excavations have been carried out, and the ground has been drilled again and again. But whatever is hidden beneath the island has never been fully revealed. Now, the investigation has returned to Smith's Cove, and this time, the team may have uncovered something that could change the entire mystery. Old wooden structures, possible box drains, and signs of human construction have already been found in this area. But during the latest investigation, something even more unusual began to appear beneath the ground, a strange pattern of wood and stones that seemed to follow a deliberate direction. And that raises a massive question. Was this simply a natural formation, or could it be part of a hidden structure connected to the legendary money pit? If this discovery continues underground, it could finally reveal why so much effort was spent hiding something on Oak Island more than 2 centuries ago. But before we uncover what the team found at Smith's Cove, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because if this excavation exposes the secret everyone has been searching for, you won't want to miss what happens next. The excavation at Smith's Cove began like any other day. Along the shoreline, the excavator carefully worked through the wet soil while the team watched closely, examining what came out of every bucket. But after the excavation reached several feet below the surface, something suddenly changed. The layers of soil no longer looked completely natural. Mixed among the dirt were pieces of what appeared to be old wood, large stones, and a surprisingly straight arrangement that stood out from everything around it. The team paused the excavation. At first, wood and stones might not seem unusual, but on Oak Island, the exact location of a discovery can make all the difference. For more than 2 centuries, Smith's Cove has repeatedly attracted attention because of structures that some researchers believe could be evidence of earlier human construction. As more soil was carefully cleared away, the mystery only grew. The wooden pieces did not appear to be scattered randomly. Several of the stones seemed to follow a particular alignment, and if these materials had simply been carried into the area by waves, tides, or natural movement, why did they appear to form such an organized pattern? Then came an even more important question. What direction was this structure heading? If the pattern continued farther beneath the ground, where would it lead? Could the team have reached the remains of an old drainage system, a platform, or perhaps some larger underground construction? Or was it simply something created by an earlier treasure hunter during one of the many searches conducted on the island? There is still not enough evidence to say for certain, but one thing was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Whatever the team had encountered at Smith's Cove might have a story that extends much deeper beneath the surface. And that brings us to the bigger question. Why is Smith's Cove so important to the Oak Island mystery in the first place? To understand the 230-year-old treasure hunt, you have to understand this shoreline. Smith's Cove may look like nothing more than a small stretch of coast, but treasure hunters have long suspected that it could be connected to one of the most intriguing theories surrounding the money pit. The idea is that an elaborate engineering system may have been constructed here specifically to protect whatever was hidden underground. Previous excavations in the area have uncovered old wooden timbers and other features that some researchers have interpreted as evidence of human activity. But the most famous part of the story is the so-called box drain theory. According to the old treasure hunting accounts, drainage structures were discovered beneath the beach at Smith's Cove, apparently consisting of channels surrounded by layers of stones and other materials. The theory suggested that these structures were designed to collect seawater and direct it into an underground passage leading toward the money pit. If that interpretation is correct, then Oak Island may have been protected by something far more sophisticated than a simple hidden chamber. Imagine trying to reach a buried treasure, only to discover that the sea itself had been turned into a security system. As soon as someone dug deep enough toward the money pit, water could potentially enter through the underground network, flooding the excavation and forcing the searchers to retreat. That would explain why Smith's Cove has become such an important part of the Oak Island story. But there is still a major problem with the theory. If the wooden structures and supposed box drains were actually part of a single engineered system, someone would have had to invest enormous amounts of time, labor, and resources into constructing it. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? Was the system really designed to protect a hidden treasure? Could it have served another purpose, such as controlling seawater or supporting some kind of old industrial or maritime activity? And then there is the box drain mystery itself. For generations, treasure hunters have been fascinated by the possibility that these strange structures were connected to an underground flood tunnel beneath Smith's Cove. According to the traditional theory, several drainage channels were constructed beneath the shoreline. Their purpose was supposedly to gather seawater and funnel it into a larger underground passage that led toward the money pit. If that system actually existed, the consequences would have been incredibly effective. Anyone digging down toward the hidden chamber could suddenly find seawater rushing into the excavation from below. And remarkably, flooding has been one of the biggest obstacles faced by generations of people searching for the money pit. But the mystery becomes even stranger when another reported discovery enters the story: coconut fiber found at Smith's Cove. Coconut palms do not naturally grow in Nova Scotia. So how did coconut fiber end up buried beneath Oak Island? Was it simply material brought there by people for some unknown purpose? Or could it be another piece of evidence pointing toward a much larger story hidden beneath Smith's Cove? The deeper investigators look, the more complicated the Oak Island mystery becomes. For generations, treasure hunters have asked the same question. If the coconut fiber found at Smith's Cove really is ancient, how did it get to Oak Island? And what was it being used for? One theory offers a possible explanation. The fiber may have been placed between layers of stone as a kind of filtering material, allowing water to pass through while helping prevent soil and sediment from clogging the drainage system. If that idea is correct, then the scale of the construction becomes difficult to imagine. Workers would have had to excavate the shoreline, prepare the beach, construct the drains, install layers of material, and potentially extend an underground passage deep into the island. That would have been a massive undertaking. But there is an important detail that cannot be ignored. The complete connection between the supposed box drains at Smith's Cove and the money pit has never been conclusively demonstrated, and that is exactly what makes the latest discovery so intriguing. If the newly uncovered wood, stones, and organized pattern begin to follow the same direction or construction style associated with the old box drain theory, the team may not be looking at an isolated feature. They could be uncovering another surviving piece of a much larger engineering system that treasure hunters have been trying to understand for generations. A possible man-made structure. The mystery deepened when the excavation revealed more than just individual pieces of wood and scattered stones. There appeared to be a relationship between the materials. As the upper layers of soil were removed, several wooden pieces seemed to form an unusually straight alignment. The stones surrounding them also attracted attention. In certain areas, the materials appeared to be arranged in layers, while the natural ground nearby looked noticeably different. That immediately raised the most important question. Was nature responsible for this pattern, or did someone deliberately build it? Distinguishing between natural formations and human construction is not always straightforward. Centuries of storms, tides, erosion, seawater, and shifting ground can move wooden debris and stones into strange positions. Finding one straight piece of timber by itself would prove very little, but researchers become much more interested when several unusual clues appear together. If multiple pieces of wood continue along the same direction, stones repeatedly form organized layers, and changes in soil composition or ground density occur around the same area. Investigators have reason to take a much closer look. They then ask whether the pattern continues. Does the same arrangement appear farther into the excavation? Is there a recognizable construction method? And does the structure begin to make sense as part of a larger design? That is what makes the discovery at Smith's Cove so fascinating. If the pattern disappears after only a few feet, it could turn out to be nothing more than naturally displaced material. But if the same alignment continues, with layers of timber and stones repeatedly appearing in an organized sequence, the team could be dealing with evidence of a much larger construction. And that would create an even bigger mystery, because building an organized structure beneath the shoreline would have required much more than simply moving a few stones. Someone would have needed labor, tools, time, and a reason to undertake such an enormous project. So if this really is a man-made structure beneath Smith's Cove, who built it and what was it designed to accomplish? Could it lead toward the money pit? The discovery has already raised questions about the structure's age and design. But now, the most important clue may be its direction. Could this structure actually lead toward the legendary money pit? The possibility of a connection between Smith's Cove and the money pit is not a new idea. For decades, treasure hunters have studied old maps, excavation records, and underground features while considering whether the supposed box drains near the shoreline could have been connected to a larger flood system beneath the island. According to the traditional theory, an underground tunnel may have carried seawater from Smith's Cove toward the money pit. So if the newly discovered alignment of timber and stone follows a similar path, the implications could be enormous. Think about what that would mean. If someone centuries ago went to the trouble of hiding valuable material deep beneath Oak Island, simply burying it would not have provided much protection. The hidden chamber would need some kind of defense. And what better defense could there be than the sea itself? According to the flood tunnel theory, an underground drainage system may have been constructed from Smith's Cove toward the money pit. If someone attempting to reach the buried chamber dug down far enough, seawater could potentially enter through the underground system. The pit would begin filling with water, forcing the excavators to abandon their efforts. From the surface, Smith's Cove would look like an ordinary shoreline, but beneath it, there could have been an elaborate engineering system designed to turn the surrounding ocean into a natural security mechanism. It is an extraordinary theory, but there is still a major obstacle. Direction alone does not prove a connection. Oak Island has been excavated repeatedly for more than 2 centuries. numerous shafts, tunnels, collapsed chambers, and disturbed areas may already exist beneath the surface. That means a structure pointing toward the money pit does not automatically mean it connects to it. The real evidence would come from following the structure farther underground and finding a continuous physical route. If investigators could actually trace that route from Smith's Cove toward the money pit area, it could provide some of the strongest evidence yet for the centuries-old flood tunnel theory. Could 300-year-old wood change everything? And there is another discovery that could be even more important than the structure itself. The wood. At Smith's Cove, a small piece of ancient timber could potentially tell researchers something that gold and silver never could. It could help establish when the structure was built. Wood preserves information about the tree from which it came, and scientists have several methods for investigating its age. Dendrochronology examines tree rings and can sometimes determine when a tree was growing and, under the right conditions, when it was cut down. Radiocarbon dating can also provide an estimated age range for ancient organic material. That is where the real suspense begins. The Oak Island treasure hunt is traditionally traced back to 1795. Since then, generations of searchers have excavated the island, constructed shafts and tunnels, and used enormous quantities of timber during their attempts to reach the money pit. So simply finding old wood does not automatically prove that it belongs to the original construction. The critical question is, how old is it? If testing showed that the timber dates to a period associated with the earliest Oak Island activity, the discovery could become far more significant. And if several pieces of wood from the same organized structure produce similar dates, researchers would have an entirely different mystery to investigate, because then the question would no longer be whether people worked beneath Smith's Cove. It would be who they were when they arrived and why they built such an extraordinary system beneath the shoreline. Finding ancient wood at Smith's Cove would be fascinating, but by itself it would not prove that a treasure was ever hidden there. The real significance would come from the date. If scientific testing showed that some of the timber existed before the traditional beginning of the Oak Island treasure hunt in 1795, the entire story could take a different direction. And if the wood turned out to be roughly 300 years old, or even older, the obvious question would be impossible to ignore. Who was carrying out construction at Smith's Cove that long ago? Now imagine that researchers recovered wooden pieces from several different locations around the cove, and testing showed that they all came from approximately the same period. Then imagine those same pieces were found forming part of one continuous, organized structure. At that point, it would become much harder to explain everything as random driftwood or debris left behind by later treasure hunters. Researchers would have to examine every detail. What species of tree was used? Were the timbers deliberately cut or shaped? Do they contain tool marks? How are the stones positioned around them? And what do the surrounding soil layers reveal? Because one unusual piece of wood can raise questions, but multiple samples producing similar results and appearing within the same organized structure could provide a much stronger line of evidence. And that is where the Oak Island mystery could reach a major turning point. If the construction beneath Smith's Cove turns out to be significantly older than the traditional treasure hunt, the mystery would no longer be limited to determining its age. A much bigger question would emerge: who built it? If researchers eventually establish that the structure beneath Smith's Cove was both ancient and deliberately constructed, identifying its builders could become one of the most important challenges yet. Think about what would have been required. An organized network involving timber, stones, drainage channels, or underground passages along the shoreline would not have appeared overnight. It would have taken workers, tools, raw materials, planning, and a considerable amount of time. And if the construction predates the 1795 treasure search, several possibilities suddenly become much more interesting. Who could have built it? One possibility involves European sailors. During the 17th and 18th centuries, European ships regularly traveled throughout the Atlantic and along the coast of Nova Scotia. Could a crew have used Oak Island as a temporary stopping point? Perhaps the area served as a place to repair ships, store equipment, or move supplies on and off the island. Another possibility is military activity. The Atlantic region was heavily influenced by conflicts between European powers during this period, with naval vessels moving throughout the area. Could the structures at Smith's Cove have been connected to some kind of military operation or shoreline engineering project? Then there is a much more ordinary explanation: commercial activity. The construction could potentially have been associated with a wharf, fishing operation, salt production, or another maritime industry. If that were the case, the mystery might have nothing to do with buried treasure at all. But there is one possibility that has kept Oak Island famous for more than 2 centuries: treasure depositors. What if a group really did bring valuable cargo to the island? Coins, precious metals, documents, or other valuable materials could have been transported ashore. Could the structures at Smith's Cove have been part of that operation? Was material moved from the shoreline deeper into the island? Or was the shoreline deliberately engineered to create a system capable of protecting something hidden underground? At this stage, none of these explanations can be treated as proven, but they all lead back to the same fundamental question. If someone really built a large and carefully organized structure here, why? Why would anyone invest so much labor, material, and time into transforming an otherwise ordinary shoreline? Because if Smith's Cove was more than just a natural beach, then whoever constructed it almost certainly had a specific purpose. And now, take the mystery one step further. What if the wood, stones, possible box drains, and underground features discovered at Smith's Cove were never separate discoveries at all? What if they were actually pieces of one enormous system? If that is what researchers are looking at, then the mystery beneath Oak Island could be far more complicated than anyone imagined. And the biggest question would no longer simply be what was found at Smith's Cove. It would be, what was this entire system built to hide or protect? So why would anyone go to such extraordinary lengths to build a system beneath Smith's Cove in the first place? The most dramatic explanation comes from the famous treasure theory, a deliberate flood trap. According to this idea, a series of drainage channels may have been constructed beneath Smith's Cove to collect seawater. Those channels could have been connected to a much larger underground passage extending toward the money pit beneath the island. From the surface, there would be almost nothing suspicious to see. It would simply look like an ordinary shoreline.